Hello, I am Citizen Sleeve, and welcome to brand new content on the channel. So, I've been trying to work out what kind of content I want to do for the channel. Obviously, we're going to have reviews, we're going to have scene slices, we're going to have bits of analysis. I'll be looking at certain genres in terms of their development and their kind of redefinition. And I came across some film notes a little while ago. I was digging through my old film notes, and I obviously want to talk about a bit of film theory as well, you know, Auteur Theory, for instance. I came across a little mini book I wrote, specifically on narrative. It's called From Conventional to Alternative Film, The Shot, the Narrative, Structure and Meaning. I've broken it down into little chapters here. We've got Introduction, we've got Chapter 1, Conventional Narrative Structure and the Treasure of the Sierra Madre. Chapter 2, The Shot, Mise en Scène and Meaning and Raging Bull and the Great Dictator. Chapter 3, Narrative Structure and Film Form in the Final Sequence of The Graduate. Chapter 4, Formal Expectations and Genre Conventions in Une Femme Est Une Femme, and Chapter 5, Alternative Narrative Structure and Discontinuity Editing in The Man Who Fell to Earth, and then a conclusion. So I thought it'd be really fun to do a little kind of narrative mini-series where I break this thing down into chunks, and we have a little series to watch about narrative specifically. So I'm going to start with a quote from Alfred Hitchcock. Let's say I'm a painter who paints flowers. What interests me is the way in which things are treated. But on the other hand, if I were a painter, I would say I can only paint something that contains a message. The murder of Janet Leigh's character in the infamous shower scene in Psycho in 1960 is legendary. The images of the knife, the curtain, the blood swirling down the drain, and the close-up of her opened eye turning back to reveal the body is, as Hitchcock himself described it, complementary pieces of film put together like notes of music to make a melody. This 45-second murder scene contains 78 cuts in quick succession in order to induce fear in the spectator, and is a masterful example of how the many differing factors that comprise the shots within a scene and the distinctive decisions of Hitchcock's direction. In order to create a shot, the director must consider its relation to the previous and forthcoming shots, cause and effect or causality. Its relation to the film's narrative as a whole, camera movement, mise en scène, temporal and spatial relations, sound, and the meaning the director wants to convey to the audience through the shot. The conventional narrative film relies on cause and effect as visual and audible cues are used to form the audience's expectations and anticipation of the narrative, allowing the audience to participate in the development of the film's form. Every shot inevitably leads to another, and therefore the narrative must also progress. The film's diegesis describes everything visibly and audibly presented in front of the audience and is inextricably bound by causality. Each shot in a conventional narrative is causally motivated, providing the narrative structure with flow and continuity and conforming to the overall narrative effect while following the story's conventions. There are 4 basic rules which allow a conventional narrative to work. 1. Causality or linear progression within an equilibrium. 2. The narrative uses a high level of closure. 3. A verisimilitude fictional world incorporating temporal and spatial relations. And finally, psychologically rounded characters. Several different codes of narration and continuity editing are combined to create a conventional narrative film, integrating those 4 rules. Continuity editing is the main driving force behind the audience's expectations of the narrative, giving shots and cuts a logical form of narrative motivation. Essentially, continuity editing is used to foreground the narrative, exposing the overall causality of the film, while making the film's form almost transparent to the spectator. The viewer, therefore, concentrates on the linear development of the narrative and is not allowed to be abstract. Basically, the film does all the work for the spectator. In general, a film's overall plot duration consists of highlighting certain stretches of story duration. Very few films manage to match their story duration with their screen duration, with the obvious exception of something like High Noon. Temporal expansion extends screen duration over story duration, therefore an action shot that lasts only a few moments in actuality can be extended with multiple camera angles of the same sequence. So think of something like the chase scene in Matrix Reloaded. whereas ellipsis reduces screen duration over story duration. So for instance, if a character is walking up a staircase, the sequence can be cut to only depict shots of that character at the bottom and top of the staircase, therefore dispensing with the unnecessary and tedious action of following that character as they climb every step. A story or format must in some way conform to the recognised realities of the audience and not be on those confines in a conventional narrative. The story must be told continuously throughout so it can be understood and the audience's interest maintained. This will usually include some form of causal agent, primarily one or more main characters, although other causal agents such as famine, storms, disease, original sin or monsters amongst others can cause a film's effects. In most conventional narrative films, the audience will see the film's narrative events through the character's eyes, perceptual subjectiveness, and in a change in the character's situation will derive from a subsequent change in knowledge or character motivation. This change will disrupt the film's equilibrium or exposition and create a goal for the character or characters to attain in order to restore or better the original equilibrium, thus providing the narrative with closure. An example of a non-characterized causal agent are the mosquitoes in Spielberg's Jurassic Park, which are discovered in amber and allow the subsequent replication of dinosaur DNA. Some specific film genres, such as horror and science fiction, rely on suppressing the causal agent in order to emphasise the film's effects. Jaws, The 400 Blows, The Hill, or withholding certain effects when there is a possibility of a sequel. Halloween, Prince of Darkness, Escape from New York, most of John Carpenter's films. Without cause and effect, a narrative would cease to be in the conventional sense. A story would make no sense to the audience, destroying their expectations for that film. Causality is the device with which directors make the shots comply with the narrative, giving a fluent continuation of the on-screen world, allowing the spectator to form expectations through causal information and understand the narrative within their own intellectual capacity. Hope that wasn't too dry, but that was part one of my little narrative series that we'll keep doing on the channel. The next part will be conventional narrative in John Huston's Treasure of the Sierra Madre. And in the comments, tell me about your favourite narrative. Tell me about interesting and different narratives, like Nolan's Memento, for instance. Right, thank you very much for watching. If you liked it, hit that like button. If you disliked it, hit that dislike button. And if you really want to support the channel, subscribe and spread the word. Loads more incoming from me, and I will catch you very soon. Take it easy.